Hey guys, this is Fernando doing another video for the Modern Survivalist. In this case, I wanted to talk about what is it specifically that you're preparing for. A couple of days ago, I was talking on the phone with a lady from a TV show. She was asking me, are you preparing for the end of the world? I told her, well, no. She wanted to know specifically what it is that I prepared for. Are you preparing for a flu pandemic? She asked, and I told her, well, not really. And yeah, an EMP, a solar flare? No. So I went on to explain what is it that I view as modern survivalism in terms of being prepared, first of all, for things that are likely to happen. The more likely they are to happen, the more you should be concerned about those. And second, the things that will have a major impact in your life. So based on that, as covered in previous videos, old age, for example, is something that is 100% certain, unavoidable, and will have an impact in your life, so it requires attention. Eventually getting sick, getting hurt, suffering an illness, something that requires medical attention, it is also very likely to happen. Given the economic context that we are in, unemployment, inflation, those are things that are likely to happen as well, and you should be planning for those too. Then there's things specifically depending on the area where you live, if there's extreme weather conditions, if it's likely to be a place that gets flooded or there's storms, and that will require as well preparing. And I thought it was an interesting question because through the years I've seen many times and read on the different survival forums that I frequent this misguided idea of if you prepare for the worst possible scenario, then you're prepared for everything in between. And it doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, you're not preparing for everything if you're preparing for this worst possible scenario that you have in mind. And then there's also a problem in terms of what it is that they think of this worst possible scenario that they have in their own minds. When you ask, well, specifically, what is this worst case scenario that you're thinking of? And someone will tell you, a full economic collapse and complete breakdown of society. Well, I tell them, well, I've been through an economic collapse, a complete economic collapse myself. The devaluation, president resigning, everything going to hell, problems on the streets, rioting and all that. And it didn't go down the way you're thinking it's going to be going down. And not only that, because I'm just one guy, I've studied and learned from previous historic events where similar things had happened, and it didn't go down the way you're thinking either. In fact, recently you have the case of Spain, Greece, Iceland. It actually went down kind of similar to what I saw back then. So it's pretty much very similar to that, and it's not what you're thinking of in terms of roving gangs or of looters and this Mad Max thing you have in your mind. So someone comes in and says, well, but I'm thinking of a complete breakdown of society and war, with a civil war and complete lack of law and everything, no government, nothing left. Usually that's where I throw my joke about the government never disappearing. It's like the cockroaches after a nuclear war, they still survive, which is actually kind of true, because no matter what happens, government always is there, not to help, but usually to mess up with you. But I tell them, okay, so you're thinking of this worst possible scenario, and you're talking about war. You're talking about civil war. Look at what happened in civil war in U.S. It has happened before. Civil war has happened before in U.S. Then you have dozens of other wars, some of them recent, some of them going on right now, and see what happens in those places. The Middle East with the different uprisings and such. What happens in those places where people are fighting the stronger government and such? What is it that happens in those cases? Would what you have in mind work in that case? And that's when all this fantasy idea that people mostly get through Hollywood and movies comes crumbling down. It does not work as seen in Mad Max, as seen in I Am Legend, and it certainly doesn't work as seen in The Walking Dead. You're not going to be forming your gang of survivors and going from one building to the other. It's not only that they're focusing on this worst case scenario, they're focusing on the worst case scenario in a way that it wouldn't actually work for them if it ever actually happened. So that's something worth considering. And also, going back to preparing for the worst possible event, preparing for a complete civil war and breakdown of the entire country, and missing the point of all the other things that are much more likely to happen. And I could give you a few examples of this. If you look at people that say, well, I'm preparing for a deadly flu pandemic spreading all over the planet and killing everyone, well, in that case, the strategy would be being as far away as possible from main population areas, right? That would be the logical approach to that specific problem. But if you do that, then you're not doing correctly in terms of being ready for unemployment. Your commuting time and the oil spend and the fuel spending going back and forth is going to be killing you. You're going to place yourself far away from the places where you're most likely to find a job, and having to travel 3-4 hours each day back and forth is going to be destroying your budget. Nonetheless, you are placing yourself in a worse position in terms of being ready for medical treatments and such by being far away from hospitals and such. So the strategy you would need for a flu pandemic, which is getting as far away from population as possible, will not benefit you in these other much more likely events of ordinary life. And another example of this is all these guys that have a ton of guns. They have 12 different rifles and shotguns and such, and they don't have any. They don't carry a weapon on a daily basis. They don't have a concealed carry license because, well, they don't need that. They're getting ready for a complete breakdown of society and just grabbing their AR or whatever rifle and defending the fort with that. So you start thinking of it and you say, okay, so you have the guns for when the looters come and when the UN invades or God knows what, but you don't have a concealed carry license and you don't have a weapon with you on a daily basis so as to defend yourself from the petty criminals or better organized criminals going after you. You're missing the point of, before you reach that far-fetched scenario you have in your mind, you're going to be going through lots of levels of crime, of security problems that are better addressed with having a weapon with you at all times, and you're going to be getting killed by a drug addict or by a desperate person or by a criminal, a gang member, because you didn't have the more common sense approach to this. One final thing, if you talk with some of the guys and they tell you, well, I just stock up on barter stuff because money is going to be worthless. In this worst case scenario that you have in mind, money is, after the U.S. collapses fully, the dollar becomes worthless. Why have savings? Why have money? Why have money stocked up and have an emergency fund in case of problems? If money is going to be worthless, these guys don't save any money because they think it's not going to be of any use. And sometimes you mention precious metals and they say, well, that's completely useless. I cannot eat precious metals, I cannot shoot it, so it is of no use. Well, it is of no use maybe to you, but there's an entire economy still existing that has where these precious metals can buy you plenty of goods and services. So even if you say, well, I cannot eat gold and silver, you can buy quite a bit of food with it as of today, and it has been that way for thousands and thousands of years. So these are just examples of how preparing for the most far-fetched scenario you have in mind really is not doing you any favors in terms of preparing you for the more realistic, likely events. So folks, that's it for now. I hope you enjoy these videos. Remember to subscribe. See you on our next video. Have a great day.